Guess who's making another MikroTik container video? This guy. Now, the reason why I'm making this updated video is just because MikroTik has actually made some changes, some updates to how containers function in their latest beta build. It's actually not so much the functionality, it's more or less the how you're installing stuff, because they've added some features like where you can set a temp directory where it will be storing the Docker to just install it. And then there's also stuff like the syntaxes that has been changed. So even though everything still roughly works the same to configure a Docker, it's just a little bit different how you type everything out now. And this video is just going to showcase that. And the cool bit is I'm not going to show you just how to do Pi-hole, because if you want to do Pi-hole, if you follow the MikroTik documentation step by step, works fine for that. I'm actually going to show you how to run your very own Unifi Ubiquiti controller on a MikroTik as a Docker container. So this is crazy because this gives you the functionality of having your MikroTik housing your Unifi controller, so that all your access points are theoretically using the MikroTik to join to a controller so that you can manage all your APs from a central location. So that is so cool, because I know a lot of you use stuff like Unifi APs and you want videos and stuff about it. I'm not really somebody that uses the kit that often. However, I do love them as a wireless provider. I think Unifi brings a lot to the table, or Ubiquiti networks. And yeah, I mean, this video is just going to show you how to kind of zombify or Frankenstein your own MikroTik so that it can be more than just a router. It can be a wireless access point controller for your Unifi access points as well. So let's dive into the video. So just briefly, what is a container? And I guess the quickest way for me to explain it is, think of a container as a virtualized package that's been packaged together using specific resources and system architectures and whatnot that you can run on anywhere. That's kind of the whole point or gimmick for containers. It's like a virtual application that's in a container, and you can ship it wherever you want to. So any type of device or router or anything that can support Docker containers, you can just deploy it there, you can run it, and there you go. You'll actually see this very prevalently in the cloud industry, because a lot of the times you've got cloud infrastructure and you just want to deploy certain applications or services to those clouds. Containers are a great way to just make that happen. So it kind of falls into that whole big virtualization sphere, which is what I love. I love virtualized environments. All right, and speaking of virtualized environments, we're actually going to log on to an x86 MikroTik that I've set up specifically for labbing purposes with containers. I just actually want to go into my VMware Workstation Pro as well, just give you guys some insights to what I'm running on this device, because since it is going to be running containers, I do recommend that it is a bit beefy. You want some extra resources. The more RAM and processing you have, and obviously drive space is a big necessity, the better that's going to work for you, because you're going to need to size your equipment accordingly. If you try and run a Unifi controller off of a small MikroTik AP, then you're probably not going to have the best time, because the device is just going to consume all the resources the whole time, or the container will just fall over. It's going to be a mess. So please make sure that if you want to use containers, size it accordingly, either on a VM like I'm using, or get one of the bigger, newer routers, especially the 2K CCRs. They're very, very powerful, and they should run containers without a hitch. And another recommendation that MikroTik makes is, if you're going to run containers, add external drives to that platform so that you can actually just store all of your data on this external drive, so that the container can be saved there instead of on your normal disk. I'm going to just leave it on my normal disk, since I've got 20 gigs on this x86, so I'm quite fine with space. But that's just a recommendation for you guys, the viewers, so that you can also just know what you're getting yourselves into. I'd like to also just navigate onto the MikroTik docs quickly. All right, so we're on the MikroTik documentation. I've just navigated to the extended features and container. And from here, you can read everything about containers. It will actually explain the requirements and example use cases. There's even a use case of setting up Pi-hole on this. And this is what I used to make the previous video. So fantastic. If you want to set up Pi-hole, you can just follow these steps step by step, and you should be good to go. Now, I just want to stress a few points here, and that's just regarding the requirements. first big requirement is you need the correct architecture. You need ARM, ARM64, or x86 architectures. So if you're running an older MikroTik that's running, let's say, the tile architecture or MIPS or something, it's not going to work on that, unfortunately. You need to get an upgrade then, or you need to run it off of a VM. Second big point is you need to ensure that you are on the correct version. So version 7.4, beta 4 or 5 or above should be sufficient to run containers. Next to that, you need to ensure that you have the container package installed. And the container package, you can actually get that from MikroTik's site. So let's navigate to MikroTik's site. You go to the software tab, and then from the software tab, you just scroll. You find the extra packages for your device. But I'm going to go to the cloud hosted router, and I'll just look at the extra packages. We can download that. And then once that's been downloaded, you can open it up, and then you'll see there is a container package. And that package you just need to drag and drop into your MikroTik, restart the MikroTik, and then it should show up in your packages files. All right. And then besides the container package, you need to also just ensure that you have physical access to the device, because you're going to have to set it into container mode. It isn't that by default. There's some command you need to run for it. And then once you run the command, you actually need to shut down the MikroTik so that it can boot back up in container mode. And then last point, it's not a necessity, but it's definitely recommended, is having an external drive. So this is more or less for your smaller routers. Maybe you've got an RB5009 and you want to run containers. Where are you going to store the things? Because maybe the drive space just isn't sufficient. So adding an external drive in those cases prove useful, and you can format an external drive as ext3 or ext4. And then you can just partition that and load it up onto the MikroTik, and then you can start storing your container files in there so that you don't need to use the file system of the actual MikroTik of its root directory and whatnot. All right, so those cover the basic points. Let's actually get into the configuration. So I'm going to navigate onto my virtual MikroTik that I have, and I'll just connect onto this via Winbox. I'll just zoom in, and here you can see I am running version 7.4 beta 5. And first step that I want to do is make sure that I have the container package. So I'll go into my system packages. There we can see container. If this was not here, then I would recommend you download the container package, drag and drop it into the file system. So in files, drop it in here, restart the MikroTik, boot it back up. When it comes back on, this package should be there. After the package has been installed, you want to set the device in container mode. So to do that, you go into the terminal and you can go system, device, mode. And I'm just going to print this. And the mode is enterprise, and it is set for container. Container is yes. If that is set to no, which it is by default, then you won't be able to run containers. So to fix this, we can just do system, device, mode, update, container equals yes. You hit enter, it's going to prompt you, and this is why you need the physical access to the device, or you need to be able to follow this. It tells you, please power down or press the reset button in 5 minutes. So you have 5 minutes to do this action. So for my VM, I just shut the VM down and then booted it back on, and then the container mode was enabled. Great. So those are the two things you need for the containers. Okay, so now that the containers have been enabled, we actually need to set up our network. So to get this done, we will firstly be adding a bridge, which is where we're going to be assigning an IP address that the Dockers can use as a gateway, and also just be bridging all of the Dockers to, so that they can communicate with each other and actually get out to the internet or other networks. So let's add a bridge, call it Dockers, and apply this. And just add an IP address to the bridge, and I will make this IP 172.17.0.1/16 as in the MikroTik documentation, but you can really make this IP pool whatever you want it to be. And then I'm going to add the Dockers interface here, and I'll apply this. So now we have a gateway that the Dockers can use to actually get out. Now, how do we add these interfaces that the Dockers can use? Well, we can go to interfaces, and if we click on the plus, we should actually see that there is a vEth interface. Sorry, I'm going to cancel that IP tunnel thing. Now, this is a virtual adapter that you're basically assigning on the MikroTik that can be bound to a container. So think of this as a virtual NIC. Now, the name I'll just leave as vEth1. And now the address is the IP address that you can give for the container. So I'm going to make this 172.17.0.2/16. And then the gateway, is what it's going to use to break out to the internet or other networks. So 172.17.0.1, which is that bridge IP. I'm going to apply this, and that is done. Now there's still one more point. We need to actually add our veth interface to the bridge. So I'll just come in here, I'll add veth1 to my Docker's bridge and apply this. And now the network portion is done. And from here, actually, if you ping 172.17.0.2, which is what the Docker is going to be using, it should already be live. It should already be responding. So that's great. We know that that virtual part of the network is done and operational. Next step is actually getting the image and installing the Docker container. So this you do all from the terminal. So you can go into the container section, and from container, you can just tab here and see the different things that you can see. There's a config section where you can set where you can pull images from, like the Docker Hub. You can do the environment variables, or you can do mounts. Now, environment variables and mounts are very important because they're optional, but they allow you to do things like specify certain details with containers. Because what are containers? They are pre-packaged applications that's already running in a certain manner. But maybe you want to change some of the details. So if I go back to the MikroTik docs quickly, let's say that you're running Pi-hole and you maybe want to change something like the password that Pi-hole uses to log in. Then you can use an environment variable to change that password. You can set stuff like the time zone. So this is why this is very useful for the environment variables, because you can tweak things in the container that you're not going to be doing from the outside. So first thing we want to do is we just want to set the external URL where we can pull the stuff from. So I'm going to go into my MikroTik, and then what we're going to do is go into config. And then from the config, we want to set our registry URL. And what is this registry URL? I'm just going to copy and paste this quickly. Copy, paste. But this is https://registry-1.docker.io, which just takes you to the Docker Hub to download these containers from. And then you just want to specify a temp directory. So what is this temp directory? Well, it's just where it's going to temporarily be storing the file while it's being downloaded and extracted. And then once that process is finished, then it can get rid of the file afterwards. But for this example, it's using disk1/pull, and I'll hit enter. And now the container config has been set where it's going to be pulling images from. And this is just via the internet. Obviously, there are different ways. If I go back to the MikroTik docs, you can see you can import it from a PC or build your own container, but we're not going to be going into the details. We're just doing the nice and easy way where we're downloading it off of the internet. So let's go back to the MikroTik. Now, next step is I'll go back into container, and then inside the container, we can now add one. So I'll add, we'll tab, and then it's going to say, I want to use remote image, because this is where we're going to be pulling the image from the internet. And now I can specify the image that I want to pull. So where do I get these details? Well, I can get that from the Docker Hub. So if you go to, I see I've already got it open there, but let's just act like we haven't opened this before. So we'll go to hub.docker.com. I'll open that up. And now from here, I can search for something like Unifi. And if I scroll down, I can see here is a Linux server /Unifi-controller, an open source program that's been maintained. I see it was updated 7 days ago, so this is great. And there I can see the architectures it runs on and supports. So I'll go into this, and it will just give me some more details about this container and what it's doing. But I can just copy this string, this name, and use that as the remote address or the remote image. So let me go into the MikroTik again, and the remote image, I'll just paste that here, and I'll just use the :latest to say exactly which build I want to download from Docker Hub. And if I tab again, we also need to just specify the interface, which will now be the veth1 that we added earlier. And then the last big thing is we need a root dir where it's going to just be storing some stuff, and I'll put this in my disk2/Unifi. And that should be the base configuration I need. This extra stuff that you can set here, like the DNS or the environment list or the mounts or whatnot, but I'm just doing a basic setup. So I'm just hitting enter. And if I print this, you should actually see that it's going to give you a name here. It gives you the tag. And it doesn't have any details yet because it's still busy downloading the package, but you'll see the status is extracting. But cool note, if I go into my interfaces, we can actually see I'm busy downloading this container now. You could see that it's doing quite a bit of bandwidth. I've got a 200 megabit link, and there we can see that is actually Docker Hub's image or their IP, and I'm just busy downloading it now directly from the internet. So the moment this download is finished, we should actually see that the container has extracted, so I don't see anything downloading anymore. So let's go into the terminal again. Let's print our container. And great, now we see some extra details. We see the OS is Linux, the architecture is AMD 64, which is the x86, and we see some extra details here, but we see the status is stopped. So that's good for us. We know the thing has successfully extracted and installed, so to speak, but it's just in a stop state by default. Now, if it said error, that would mean that you would have to try and re-download the image again, or you would have to just use one of those other methods to get this image onto your MikroTik to get the container running. Now, to actually start the container, it's as easy as just saying start. So container, start, and then you can say which container it is. So in my case, it is 0, because that is the line item for this container. I'll hit enter. And if I print the containers again, we should see that the status is running. So that is fantastic. So the container is up and running, it's working. So, oh man, I'm so psyched, we're almost there. Now, if I go back onto the Docker Hub stuff, if you scroll down, you'll actually see it tells you a bit of details, but it tells you the web UI is at HTTPS IP 8443, and then you can run the setup wizard. So I'm just going to navigate to that page, HTTPS 172.17.0.2:8443. You can see I've played around with it before, but this is now a fresh setup. And if I go advanced, I proceed, it's going to prompt us the setup wizard. So this is now a Unifi controller running on our MikroTik. Crazy stuff. Now I can give this network application a name, so I might just make this TMB Unifi control, and then I'll just select the license agreement. I'll go next. Sign in with your Ubiquiti account. Now here I've already got an account. If you don't have one, you can sign up yourself with your own details. But the sorry part is that it is on a cloud base as well. So these login details are kind of saved in the cloud, and you know, then this is why I need to just blur this out. Then it tells you Unifi network setup, basic network configuration. So I'll just go next. It says I have no network access points, so that's fine. Go next. I won't set up the Wi-Fi yet, so I'll just skip this step. And my country or territory, I'm just going to update that to my country, which is South Africa. And I'll finish. And it's doing a little bit of configuration here. And in a second, we should actually see that the Unifi controller is there. It's live, it's working. And there we go. We're in our Unifi controller now. We can see the version. We can see all of the stuff that's running here. One thing that I like to do is just going into the settings. And in the system, I'm just going to change this to a dark theme, so it's a little bit easier on all our eyes. And yeah, this is it. Now, the reason why I waited to make this video is I first wanted to get my hands on a Unifi or access point, because I don't typically stock or have any Unifi equipment. So let's add an access point. I do have an access point that has been factory reset. So what I'll do is just quickly log on to that access point using PuTTY. And that access point's IP is 192.168.1.50, which lives on my actual LAN network. And I'll just SSH onto it. I'll log in as UBNT, password UBNT. All right, I think it actually didn't factory reset, so hang on a second. Let me just factory reset this access point. But what's nice is I can show it to you guys now. All right, there we go. I can see the access point. So what I'm going to do now is actually log on to it. So let's SSH onto 192.168.1.50. Login is UBNT. And there we are in the Unifi access point. Great. So first things first, I just want to see my IP if config. And this is again just an IP address that is on the LAN on my bridge interface here. And this is giving me access out to the internet. If I look at my routes on the access point, it's just a basic access point on my home network at the moment. So how do I get this connected to here? Well, there's a few ways we can go about it. Now, this depends also on your setup. If you have a physical MikroTik, then it's obviously you'll just have to route the traffic to that MikroTik. But what I've done is I've bridged my virtual MikroTik on its virtual adapter onto my physical network. So it's also part of the actual network right now. And this MikroTik's IP is 192.168 1.56. But what I've done is on my actual home router, which is the default gateway for all of these devices, I've added a static route to say if you want to get to 172.172.168.16, then get to this MikroTik's IP. So it's just forwarding this range to the MikroTik. So this is how we're able to actually get to 172.172.0.2 from this access point. So since we can ping it, that's a good sign. That means we should be able to adopt this access point. So to do this, we're just going to do the set inform. Now I'll make a different video where you can actually use DHCP on your MikroTik with DHCP options to basically inject the setting into the client so that you don't need to manually add it all the time this way. But for this demonstration, just to show you that it actually works, we'll just do a set inform, basic static configuration. And it'll say if you want to register, you're going to be registering on HTTP, and then you're going to be connecting to 172.170.2 colon 8080/inform. I will hit enter, and it says adoption request sent to, and then it's been sent to my Unifi Controller, which is a virtual IP on my MikroTik. Use the controller to complete the adopt process. So let's do that. Let's go back onto this controller. And let's just quickly check, is there any devices? Hey, if I refresh there, we can see there is a UAP-LR just waiting to be adopted. So what we can do is I can say, hello, little access point, I'm going to adopt you. And I'll click on adopt device. And as you can see, this is clearly an old access point because the support for it has ran out in 2021. But it's something that I just got to test with, which I'm happy and grateful for, since I said I don't really use Unifi stuff that often. But here we go, we've adopted this access point. So if I just check around here, it's busy adopting, it sees what the IP address is. So pretty soon we can actually be, and still busy adopting. But what we can do so long as set up a network. So let me set up a Wi-Fi network. I'll call this TMB-Wi-Fi. My password will be TMB12345. It needs to be 8 characters. And I actually need to wait for that AP to be adopted before I can add this. So I can do this base add, but the AP's not been joined to it yet. So let's just wait for this adoption process to finish. And this might take a minute or two. Getting ready. But now I've got the single AP, it is online. So I'm fairly happy with that. So let's go back into our networks, the Wi-Fi networks. And then this TMB Wi-Fi, I can see that this AP has already joined the space group, so that's fine. So in theory, I should actually be able to connect to this AP that's now been joined to this Unifi. So let's test this out. I'll actually just check on my phone if I have the SSID being broadcasted. So let's check here. Sorry, I'm using a Huawei phone and the user interface isn't the greatest for me. So let's see access points. Here I can see TMB-Wi-Fi. And my password is TNB12345. I will connect. And it's connected. Great. So if I look at my clients or my topology, I can actually see there is a Huawei P40 Lite. It is connected. We can see the signal strength and all that good bits. And if I actually look at this access point, let's go to the client as well. I can go into the topology, click on the client just to get some information about this client. And we can see what its TX and RX rate is. We can see how many packets have been sent and received. And let's do something fun. I actually installed the speed test app on this phone. So let's just run a speed test. And click on go. And then we should actually see that this thing is going to be pushing some traffic. So let's see there, it's doing 72 megabits. Cool. So I think I've shown you now what I wanted to show you was how quick and easy it is to load up this Unifi controller running off of your MikroTik. Let's just quickly check a few little things because I know a lot of people like to ask this. And what is the resource usage like? Well, let's go see on the MikroTik. I will just quickly look at my usage here and also my CPU. Now this does appear to be quite resource hungry because I mentioned I do have 8 gig of memory on this virtual router and I'm using I have 6.6 available at the moment. So I've used like 1.4 gig of memory just to use that Unifi controller. But it goes without saying, I mean, it's going to use a little bit of memory. But now I have a single pane, a single stack where I'm running my controller and my access point off of, or my network kit. That's what's really so cool. I have this single stack now. Think of it as SDN almost, and I'm able to run everything off of a central point now. Instead of having a server do this and something else do that, now everything can be put on one place using a container, which is awesome. Um, with the MikroTik docs, I also just want to show this to you guys. Just tips and tricks that I saw that they added yesterday regarding some of the limitations. So you can actually put in limitations to stop the resource from being overutilized or being consumed rapidly by your container. So you can actually enforce some type of resource caps just so that you have that safety net if you're scared of the container maybe consuming too much resources and then the MikroTik starts acting up. All right, now this is also quite nice for starting containers after reboot, use scheduler. Now, what do they mean about this? Well, if you reboot your MikroTik, the container will actually be stopped again. So you need to manually start it again, like we did earlier in the video, but you can use a scheduler, a script basically, that will be run after each reboot to just automatically start your containers up again. But for that, you can look at the scheduler details, and if needed, I can make a separate video on that, but just a little bit of tips and tricks for you to take note of. But this is again why I recommend looking at the documentation. All right, so this is where we will be ending off the video. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I'd obviously love to thank my network pals on Patreon and on YouTube members. You guys help out so much with the channel. Also the network supporters and you guys, the viewers. Thank you for watching the videos. It's helping the channel grow. Remember to like and share and comment on the videos. It really does help out with the algorithm and how YouTube actually functions. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. So hope you have a great day or evening. See you in the next one. Bye.